everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about, and this one, I'll probably try to stay longer just so that we can get some better discourse, maybe in the comments. Um, so, we're talking about the whole issue of Democrats because, well, I'll say this first. Because there has been an economic change, and I would say since going into the pandemic, now we have another, well, we're in another war, even though, Congress hasn't officially enacted anything like war powers in a way where Bush did it for 9/11 or, possibly Obama. I don't recall Obama doing that. So that's why I feel like what Trump is doing is still in the same vicinity. Not saying they're both the same, but they're still in the same vicinity. For example, when during Obama's era, when they went to go get Osama bin Laden, again, probably Congress had something to do with allowing that to happen. But I watched the documentary, I believe, on Netflix, and it seems like it was just a mission to be carried out by the president at that time, which was Obama. And I see this as the same thing. And I try to tell people, you got to understand the media will manipulate things. And it's unfortunate, that it's both sides of Republicans and Democrats. But, for me, it's more about seeing how um, I appreciate that Democrats are being exposed because I think what a lot of you who are Democratic voters, and I was at a point as well, and I think I stopped voting Democrat. Gosh, it's been for a year. I want to say maybe after Obama era, but I was still pretty like I think in my 20s, probably mid 20s or whatever. But I stopped like looking at it from that way. I wasn't voting Republican like that either. In mass, I think I became more independent because I was already, I knew enough and understood like war history. I'm someone who paid attention at school. And then, when 9/11 came, I was about in 10th grade and I seen kind of, what was happening and the whole Halliburton issue and all of this money that were being put into this war machine. So that's why I'm like, man, I don't want to be just voting for anybody. And sometimes it does seem like Republicans are always in some type of war. But then I had to realize, again, just trying to not be biased, So if you're listening to this channel, you have to fight your mindset to not be so biased where you do need to choose a side because we need to make sure that we're still progressing as a country, right? As a nation of people here in the United States. But you do have to understand, and I think it's more about holding the media accountable, or I don't want to say the word accountable, responsible for what they've been putting out, even since the Black Lives Matter era. Even media probably during certain ages, because as a Black woman, I'm not denying that there may be violence. I already know about these things: violence, gang activity, pedophilia, incest. All that stuff happens within my community. I'm not someone who's going to sit here and deny it, right? I'm someone who I'm not going to play Christian in your face, like other people do, or look to hide a criminal because I think because of their skin color, that's why I should be hiding them versus no, this is for the betterment of the community. They need to go, right? Um, but you have the media where it's so focused on that particular segment, that subset of the community where you don't hear so much about positive people, or you may not hear from people like me. And that's why I do need to continue to try to bring my voice out. And there's others like myself, but you don't hear of us too much who can speak about these issues or understand the issues that affect our communities. We're not all involved deeply within every section of our community because I don't see me personally. I don't see it as I need to be in the ghetto and working with people who I know for a fact who have pushed me away or others away, and sometimes it's not about lifting those people. Sometimes my community can expect more from someone who they don't respect, and went out and did the hard things. They had the discipline to do the things they need to do, but they don't want to give them that respect in general. They rather respect the person who didn't go to school, who doesn't read, who rather have a rap career and see their opinions as something viable, right? Versus other people who's like, yeah, we actually worked in corporate. We know how these people work and we know how they are. I can tell you both bad and positive things that I've been around, but will you listen? Will you be someone attentive and comprehending, right? So when we're looking at red states and blue states, the thing that I've seen over the years, again, I'm someone that's in California. I'm a native of California. Born and raised. I have generations of family that have been here for a very, very long time. And it's just very interesting, though, that over the years I've seen the influx of what we would call migrants at that time, because what we knew was that, well, they're seasonal migrants. That was what we looked at some of the migrants as. And our communities wasn't so flooded um, as they became to be. California is very diverse. So growing up, I lived in a city where we had Hmongs and Vietnamese and Cambodians, because when I used to go to school or travel, when I would tell, some people, associates, about different people I've been around, some people were like, "Whoa, I never heard of Cambodian, or I never heard of that." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I have." But at that time, you would think we had a combination of friendship, and it was. I've had um, Mexican friends or El Salvadorian friends, or associates at that time. I've lived amongst them. We've rented apartments and places together. I've had Americanized, meaning they're Americans, so I know the difference between Americans and someone who just came from over the border. Like we see that. I've had co-workers and of all different races, and some who recognized the influx that came in, and they would be like, "Nah, this happened in the '70s," and maybe around that Cesar Chavez time, right? But now, when we're looking at the changes that are happening, this is why we can look at articles of why people are fleeing. Now, yes, there are a subset of people that are fleeing California. Now, California has billions, I think over 40, and I would say maybe close to 50 million people living here. We are full. We've been full, in my opinion. But we have a lot of people here, a lot of people that come from different states, different countries. They come to California. When you look at the old Jackson story, I'm talking about Michael Jackson's family. It was the thing was to come to California. A lot of people who rap and sing, entertainment wise, they may start where they're at, but once they start getting bigger, they are coming to California. Because this is just a state where it's been promoted that you can really make it here. But some of those people, a lot of those people, I'll say, fail. You'll meet a lot of people that come here and they really believe that they're going to be some great athlete or some entertainer or whatever. They believe they're coming here. And you have to understand, you also have to compete against the native population that's already here. So we're already growing up playing those sports in entertainment, whether it's ballet or Broadway. Broadway is probably more of an East Coast thing, but I'm just giving you the general consensus of the competitive marketplace that you're coming into. I know some people who have a certain reading level comprehension like to promote this sexual market value place, which that's for prostitution. You know, but they like to put that on average people who actually go out and work and do respectable things, and that's why you need people like me to come out, because it's like, how are you placing that on people who want to work and do things? And that's the type of subset in the community that you have. Those people who actually believe they have value to bring, outside of things that a community values, which is education, entrepreneurship, businesses, revenue that that we can generate and share amongst each other, safety and security, protection under the law, and then protection, amongst each other in the community. Those are things that you would be looking for, and those are things that I'd say some Black communities in our past have established, and it just went down the drain. It's not a men versus women thing. I think the community in general, lost what was happening, right? And we can point to drugs, we can point to the pimp culture that came, right? Because again, if the media and even ourselves, if we're promoting that stuff, that's getting into the minds of the young, where you have young people wanting to be that instead of doctors, and now you have a doctor shortage. You have shortages in other areas of education and the financial marketplace, places that I feel we need to see our faces, because we've been in America for so long. And I'm talking about the establishment of the United States of America, as a country, as a nation, a sovereign nation of our own. We could have had all those things. So I'm not gonna say that there wasn't any discriminatory issues off paper that we experienced, but when you allow a defeated mindset, a negative spiritual connotation to affect everybody, um, you have people that are really delusional, right? And now we came into the age where, my community specifically, I felt like we were too focused on crime and criminals more than just looking at education and the failure rates and why is that happening. Looking at jobs, right? I think these are the main things that when we look at Democrats and Republicans, let's say from the 1960s, they focused on, right? They focused on the education. We have, I think, over or about 100 universities that are predominantly Black universities and American universities, and people come from all over, to attend those universities as well, right? They should be on the same level as any big college or whatever. But I think, again, we're not doing that for ourselves to, put those colleges on a pedestal to be just as the same. And that's those, again, some issues that are happening internally, some people don't know about, or trying to sweep them under the bus. But when we're talking about crime, it's so crazy how, as I grew up here, how crime has just gotten more and more and more out of hand. But on top of that, you have policies, that were in place that continue to allow this stuff to happen, because somehow, you have people who really don't understand the criminal mind. I know some people like to say, women like to watch crime shows and true crime, and we do. Some of us, we just like being in the house watching stuff like that. Some women may take it and feel afraid of the world, but some women take it as, important to understand human psychology outside of trying to be a psychology major. And when you look at that, and when I look at politicians who are allowing no cash bail for a thief or someone who robs, I see that as, hey, why would you take the issues of Black people, because we focused on crime, and made that the issue with the whole Black Lives Matter movement? And that's something we got to see as our fault, right? Because it could have been, let's talk about more than just that. I think sometimes we are not humble in a general consensus. And the humbling has to come where you have to stop allowing media, you have to stop allowing both men and women lie about their experiences, because that also happens. And now you're attacking other people for no reason. You're attacking them, but you don't attack the people in your community the same way. Or you think violence is always the answer because no one knows conflict resolution. I've been into it with um, different people in my community. Growing in my, and I'll just speak about my adult area, um, because I did go to school. And again, my dad comes from an area where an era, excuse me, where um, school was different at that time compared to now. It was way different back then, to now. So his whole objective, which you would think more black people, their objective would be, is, hey, if you're not going to give us certain stuff in these schools, we want to make sure our kids have a fighting chance to compete with your kids. And because of that, I know I'm able to compete on the level of anybody who's outside of my community. But some people won't see it that way. Some people, because if you're in the ghetto with other ghetto people, and again, it's not saying I'm removed from these type of areas or things. I did grow up middle class, but you coming to patron someone's store that's not black or whatever, their mindset, because they're ignorant as well. And that's really what it is. It's a bunch of ignorant people of all races. They will believe you're the same as that other person who just seems that they want to cuss people out, or whatever they want to do. And that's just not the truth. You should take people on a case by case basis, especially if you're claiming to be a Christian. And it's a lot of Christians out here, um, who just like the label of being a Christian, and I don't think that that's what qualifies you as someone who's a follower of Christ or a believer in God. I just don't think that qualifies you by just saying those things. And I don't care how mad you get. Like, I can tell by your life that you're not progressing your life to be better. You're okay with being where you're at and saying God gonna help me or whatever, but that's just not true, right? So when you're looking at blue states and red states, now you have this crime rampant. You're letting people out, time and time again, because you feel for the criminal more than the victims. My car was broken into, it was stolen, and guess who had to pay to get it fixed? I had to pay that money out of my pocket. Luckily I had a good job at that time, but it's the fact that I still had to pay out of my pocket. Do you think these politicians are thinking about the working class? They're not thinking about the working class. They're thinking about saving immigrants, believing they're the working class, and it's just like, no, there's still a working class of Americans here, and you're doing them a great disservice by allowing homelessness to flood. Because some of the times my car got broken into, I can tell it was just probably someone homeless, right? I've had an old beat up car one time, and the back window was out, and I caught this man was asleep in my car. Probably was drunk that night and found a car that he can sleep in, right? So this happens, and I feel like our government is just totally oblivious to this because they don't really have a checks and balance system. But what they will do is tax the hell out of your ass, right? So California alone, we've been seeing tax after tax, and it's the fault of the voters too. That's why it's important to read and comprehend what you're reading. When you get those packets that come in from, for elections that are coming up, you need to read those things. You need to take the time. You need to sit with your family, and you need to read it. You need to understand what you are about to vote for. You need to understand the difference between saying yes and no on the propositions. You need to understand how this is going to affect our taxes, and didn't we just raise taxes on something else? Because when you look at it, we've been stacking tax on top of tax on top of tax when other taxes have not even stopped yet. So now we're implementing another tax for something else, and we're still paying the tax that we voted for previously, right? And again, I'm going to come back to that analogy. Why would you pay $350 for cable and now you have a streaming that you can pay probably $50 towards? Or if you want all the streaming services and it adds up to $100, that's fine. I'm just saying, even in your household, you have to think just like that. You may hate some of the businesses or business owners, but why do they want to keep employees if I can get better production off some robots, or now AI is here, or I got an employee that just came in and they can do these three things and I can pay them a little bit more, right? It's all about productivity and saving money, having more time, right? Meeting those demands, but at the cost to where you can afford to pay more employees. Okay. So now when we're looking at blue states, what is the most ridiculous thing that I'm coming across, was being talked about, is the fact that now that California specifically, and I'm just talking about my state, are experiencing people leaving. And again, looking at the numbers, there's about 40 to 50 million people living here. So when they're talking about 800,000 or 300,000 more, maybe it comes out to a million or so total. And then are they counting the people that came back? So it's a whole numbers thing when you're talking about math here. So it's big in the news. Again, that's what I'm saying. The media can help manipulate things if you don't know your math, and you're like, well, out of 40 something million people that's here, only 300,000 left or 400 something thousand left. That's not crazy numbers, right? But let's talk about the people who left because they were being forced to leave because it's so unaffordable, even in the areas where it's still kind of cheap to live, even in those areas. So now you're forcing people whose families have been here for decades upon generations, who started businesses here, who got connections here. Now they're having to move. These are not the people who are just disgruntled and saying, well, I'm moving California because of the taxes and blah, 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 or the crime, which they're valid in why they want to do that. But some people in California are not around any of that type of stuff. Like, we are a very, very huge state, okay? So some areas, when you're coming to those big cities like LA, San Francisco, um, uh, Fresno, Bakersfield, um, there's another city here. I forgot which was because I'm just talking about maybe the top five cities here. Maybe San Diego. When you're looking at those cities, you got most people moving into those areas. So now costs are rising. You have a lot of homelessness moving there. You know, um, I remember in college, or going to a certain college area, it was okay that you had bums hanging out on the beaches and stuff. Now you can go to certain beaches that look like they're clean. Even there's those, black areas that have beaches. You would see these tents and stuff now. You would see all this stuff, and it's crazy how the current governor it's like he hasn't even visited any of these spaces, any of these cities, any of this stuff to find on his way out. Now he wants to, talk about it, right? And it's his fault. It's his fault for being so lax on these things when people have been complaining and complaining. Businesses have to pay for those crimes through insurance, and their insurance may go up. Insurance costs is go up no matter where you're living now. Even your car insurance is high. You can think you're living in a better neighborhood and you're gated and all that stuff, but it still doesn't even matter that you're moved there because the crime, the robberies and car thefts in California alone is so high. I can't blame insurance companies for like, yo, we got to take care of XYZ. Again, my car was broken into at least I believe two times, and then it was stolen, probably from someone hating. I already know people just be hating. I have a nice car. And some people may not don't think I deserve it. They don't think I work hard. And again, that's when you're living amongst ghetto people. You think everybody is ghetto, or you think somebody, a crab. You're a crab. You just want to bring someone down. So it was good for me to bring my car back around fixed. And like, you're not gonna make me feel any type of way. I'm gonna make you feel some type of way. Go work hard for it. Spend the 10,000 hours on your craft and make the right decisions. And maybe you can get the car that you said you wanted. I remember having a broke down green car I bought off some dude. um, you know, I want to say it wasn't around Compton. It was around, dang, I forgot where my auntie used to live, but they was, it's a kind of it's a black hood area. But I bought that car from him for like $400. And it was a drop top because in my mind when I was younger I was like I was going to get a drop top, it was going to be a green car, like that was just my desire for a car. But now years later I put in the work and I still got a car that I really really liked, right? And it was still a drop top, so it's like everything I said in its allotted time came to fruition, right? Regardless of who want to believe you deserve it or not. Like that's their own way of thinking. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. The way they think is not how I think. And I tell some people I took an L because I shouldn't even been around you in the first place. I knew you wasn't on my level, but I think sometimes in our community we think everybody is the same, and it's like we're not. We're just not. You got some people that think um, some majority of us come from single parent homes, and it's like no. No, that's just not, it's just not the truth. It's just not the truth. So again, when you're experiencing people leaving from California, um, again, I want to say we have 40 to 50 million people living here still. And we're talking about a number like, for example, this 477,000 people that are losing out of 40 or 50 million people. It's not a huge hit, but because the media is promoting this, right? And again, big up to the states that are open to people coming there because it's going to help them politically. And this is where I feel the Democrats in these blue states are failing to understand how you're messing up your own chances if people are moving to these states because you do not want to fix the issues here that are your responsibility. You know, now you have this tax, this exit tax that you want to put on people because people are leaving. So now y'all want to put on an exit tax, which I feel is some type of crazy extortion. It's even if it, let's just say it was for anybody that left. Because again, I'm telling you, it's not just everyone who's perceived to be wealthy. You got people that are having to leave who are not wealthy, but they have to get better jobs. They have to move out of their communities because they've been pushed out by the immigrants that came there. You're not giving them access that they need. Even if they want to go for bank loans for their business and stuff, they're being denied, and you're not looking into any of that stuff. This is the reason why. So let's just say it's across the board because I don't think they should discriminate if they're going to do this. But this shows Democrats are always about taxing a motherfucker more than doing the work. They would rather tax you than employ more people to say we need to enforce the law. We need to find out where's the gaps, the vulnerabilities in our different communities. We need to see what's happening here. But Gavin is looking crazy, and I'm telling you, I stopped liking Gavin. Uh, I forgot what year it was, um, and the reason I stopped liking him because again, if you're a Democrat listening to my channel, you got to understand. This is what I'm saying. You got to have a mind that's open, and you can't think from a biased nature. So you have these king protests, no kings protests going on. But the time when I found out that the voters here voted on, and here's the crazy hypocrisy too. You want to say voters need to vote on, this whole redistricting, voting on voter ID, if we should have it or not. You know, you have this stuff, right? But this motherfucker, we voted to keep the death penalty, I believe, at that time. And this motherfucker said, I don't want to follow that because it's immoral and I'm going to. So he wanted to pretty much say that he wanted to change up the death penalty and how, you know, death penalty inmates should serve out the rest of their terms. You know, you got some people out here committing crazy crimes that are senseless, that have no real reasoning to them, and yet they're catered. It appears as if they're catered to more than the person who's a victim or their families. Their families still ain't got no money. They're still suffering. They're still doing all that stuff. You know, is restitution really paying off for their crime? Really making up for maybe the income that was coming into that home, whether it was a man that was working or a mother who was working, right? Is their kids getting that pay that's at the same amount or more so they can pay for light bills and get food so they don't have to depend further on government assistance, you know? So you have this crime wave that's happening again in California, and you got governors who says we're going to disregard what the voters say and I'm going to do what I want to do. And now because he wanted to do what he wanted to do, so again, you can't blame a Trump for taking the actions that he's taking if you're moving with an unbiased or with a biased mindset. If you're moving with a biased mindset, you would think Trump is the only one. He's being immoral and he thinks he can do what he wants. And you're not looking at the people that you voted for doing the same damn thing. They're doing the same damn thing or have done the same damn thing. Now, the Democrats are saying, well, the only way we can resolve something, and it seems to me, is to put another tax on people, people who are working, people who got a business. Now, in this here, I believe it was this article, or maybe the next article, um, it was saying, I think Washington, yes, it's the next article here that I'm going to show. Washington wants to add, um, well, they just passed a 9.9% tax on incomes over $1 million. So, again, we're talking about if you're a business owner and you're a small business owner, one woman team, one man team, solo entrepreneur, maybe you got an LLC, maybe you got a small team, maybe you got a janitorial service, maybe you got a hair or barber shop, and you're making $1 million, and you're saying, you know what? And again, this is just for the state of Washington, but I want you guys to understand how Democrats may bring it on just in general, right? It's highly possible because it makes no sense. I would think the 200 billionaires here in California should definitely bring that to court. You know, I don't hate on billionaires and millionaires like a lot of people like to do. I just don't hate on all of them like that. You know, yeah, there's some who are crappy, who are assholes, who are sadistic. You know, but you have a lot of those people living in your average neighborhood, but you don't point that out. That's what I'm saying. I don't side with people just to side. Like, you got to make sense to me. You got people right in your neighborhood that do the same pedophilia, and you let them stay there. The same schemes and scams, and you let them stay there. You're not fighting for them to be put in jail. You're not talking about the little girls that's fucking that they've been fucking with and been around the high schools and the junior highs trying to pick them up. You're not talking about those type of people. You're not putting them in jail so they can suffer consequences. You're not voting for the correct sheriffs so he can make sure that crime is ridden as much as possible from your community. You're not talking about your brothers or your cousins or your aunties and stuff molesting your daughters and your sons. You're not talking about that. You're not putting them out. So why do you want to hold up to moral standing because it's Trump now? Some people see if Trump's getting away with it, I can do it too. You have no moral standing. You have no grounds to talk about it because it's true. There's been plenty of black women who's been talking about the issues that they experienced growing up. But you told us it was a lie. You told us, why are we lying? You told a little 9-year old, 10-year old girl that she's lying. If she ain't never seen nothing about sex because you were monitoring what she was watching and all that other stuff, if you did that, children wouldn't even know about that. That means someone else has to be manipulating, showing them stuff, doing stuff to them. Because at some age, if you're monitoring as much, they would never know about that stuff. If they come across, schoolmates that may have brought it up or talked to them, that means something may be going on in that schoolmate's house, or their parents don't monitor a lot of that stuff. Some parents really do monitor what their children listen to, what they really be on it. But y'all won't believe that. So that's why I'm like, I don't care about people wanting to act like Trump is just being horrible. I'm not for any of that stuff. I wish, anybody who's, doing anything to somebody wrong, that's why I'm for the death penalty. That's why I'm for it. I have the moral ground to stand on it. I don't do or think like none of y'all. But this is what I'm saying. You got a lot of that stuff going on. And these are other factors when I'm talking about this fleeing the state, these are other factors that are happening. The crime rate is not, if people are paying more for insurance, it's because the crime is going up too. But now, again, you have these numbers, and this is why I feel like it's ridiculous even for Governor Newsom, because again, I'm going to talk about California specifically, to raise a tax, a billionaire tax for 200 people only, so they can pay for social programs that you don't want to cut off. You really don't have nobody, it seems like, qualified enough. Unfortunately, it just seems like that because they're not taking care of the budgets, the money good enough to where you still need people to pay for that shit. I believe there's another, I think I told you guys I was going to show you an infrastructure tax here in California as well, because EV cars have been on a rise. It's affecting this bucket for infrastructure. Again, I'm okay with paying taxes into things that, hey, I bet not see no potholes, and we've seen that in Democratic area. I'm sorry, but we have. There's poor Republican areas. Again, I don't try to talk on this channel where I have to dumb down things. But hopefully you guys that do watch this can understand that there's been a lot of downfalls in areas that have been managed and mismanaged by Democrats, and you have to be ignorant to not think they should not be held to the consequences because they were responsible for making sure those areas are better. They can say, you know what, yes, there has been discrimination issues with, black people, specifically black men, who are dealing with over policing. The thing is to address the over policing in the respects of saying, hey, you can't just be going out attacking black men in the way that you're doing. We're looking at actual data that says this officer, for example, have too many complaints on him, you know, and you have to send people in to really look at that stuff, right? But your goal, the underlying issue, was to say the over policing issue for this community, knowing damn well a lot of other communities got crime going on. If they don't want to talk about their crime, and I'll even say white people talk about their crimes all the time. So, when you got some ignorant people thinking that white people don't talk about their crime, it's like, that's because you only be focused on stuff that don't even matter. You focused on trying to play tit for tat all day. So you're not even mentally ready to handle the data to understand so that you don't got to be around here angry at people all day. Like they talk about, they got so it's so many damn shows, and it's predominantly white people more than black people in these shows, and it's been for a long time. I remember seeing some comments of, and these are freaking ignorant people. I know they are trying to bring up the show Snap. You know how long Snap been out, and you know how many women have already been watching Snap. You just found out about it. You just found out about the show because you had the idea that all women were just angels and good and this and that. Even though some women have been telling you about they toxic mamas, but you didn't want to hear that. So now you want to change the conversation that the mamas are so toxic to you. When you had a sister in the home and she was probably, stuff was happening to her. If she was being kicked out, you want to call her fast, but you was probably having a baby. And again, these are just situations that are happening, and it tries to get covered up. If we all gonna stand on it, let's stand on it, and let's say, yo, I'm not gonna hide behind it. I'm gonna speak my truth, so we can move forward. But thinking someone shouldn't suffer the consequences for their actions, that's, I'm sorry, you have to. You got to spend some time. You got to take a time out. But no, some people think, well, he wasn't doing this, he been doing this, so you should let him go. We don't give a fuck what the hell he's been just doing. He still got to pay for what he did. He has to go and spend that time alone. He needs to be alone. So this is why you have people leaving. They're leaving these blue states because they're soft as Charmin on crime. You can't bring up this crime bill from the 90s and say, well, Democrats have been. No, they have not, because there will be no reason for the no cash bill. There would be no reason. What they should have said is, we have to figure out a way to get all prisons set up to where nonviolent offenders are in certain areas. Meaning, if we hate private prisons, then what we need to do is make sure the funding that we're giving to the prisons that we run, or the prisons that we don't want them to be so private, we need to give the funding so that nonviolent are separated. We need to invest in the technology that would say, hey, why is this man sitting in jail or this woman sitting in jail? They should have been gone. Why have they been here over a year, and they should have been had a hearing or a trial, or they should have been let out because they're not violent. If it was someone who was stealing constantly and constantly, your ass should be held in jail, but maybe in the non-violent section. So these are things that they could have done. If you're gonna put money towards something, this is what you could put it into. They want to make up programs for homeless. I think LA had over 150 million dollars or something for helping the homeless, and them fuckers gave it back because they can't figure out what to do. Then they tried to take some homeless in and spent over $6 million on a few homeless, not even 10 of them. How the hell are you spending millions of dollars on one fucking person? It's ridiculous. Their ideas have been ridiculous for the longest time. Just ridiculous. This ain't about a Democrat or a Republican. This is about your family sustaining it and saying the government is getting too much out of hand. We got another damn tax. That's what you got to see this as. So these people ain't just fleeing because they hate, the Democrats. It takes a lot for them to say, "Yo, we moving out of here." It takes a lot for somebody to say, "I'm moving." I was even thinking about moving out of the country. I was thinking about moving out of my state over the past year or two. I was thinking about that stuff, but I'm like, nah, man, I don't. I wouldn't change I wouldn't do that for California. I've already lived in different states. I lived in the South. I've lived in the Midwest. I would never change that again for California. So, for the people that are still here or want to come back, I think the important part is that we make people understand the issues and that we want them to change. So when Californians are saying, "Yo, we want to recall Governor Newsom," at that point in time, I'm like, man, it was funny because again, I wasn't for either side. It was just like, wow, they're really trying to get this man out of here, but because they are being affected. These are working class people too. These people work too. If you don't give a damn and you're still voting for them, that means you're contributing to these issues coming further down the line. Meaning, Democrats are going to find another way to tax somebody. They're going to keep doing it. I don't know a governor yet that's in the running that's a Democrat that wants to be tough on crime. I don't know one yet that really wants to bring the crime issues to the forefront because that will get rid of a lot of issues that are happening in this state. I didn't hear one talk about we can provide more jobs to auditors in certain government programs that we have so that we're making sure there's no fraud, so that we're making sure people who should be getting the help is getting the help. I haven't heard one Democrat, and again, I'm not saying the two Republicans ain't doing the same thing. Again, your vote shouldn't be based on who Trump endorses, what Trump's like. It definitely shouldn't be on that. Your vote needs to be based on what is fucking going on. Fuck all that other extra shit. That's a manipulation of the media. Why is Trump in Democrats' mouths knowing they're blaming gas on him? Gas had been going up forever. I remember when gas was cheaper in California growing up. That shit started to rise. It started to rise. I would say probably around maybe Bush era, you know, and then Obama's era, because he was talking about the gas taxes and stuff too for the federal, in the federal government. But that shit was already between $3 and $4. Why are we paying $3 and $4? Because we got another damn tax. We're finding out more and more that California does not need to depend on the oil from everyone else. And I'm gonna tell you why. I used to live in Santa Barbara. I used to live there, and we could see them oil rigs out there. Sometimes that shit would get on the beach and get on your feet. And so California said, well, because that's happening, we're just going to stop it. And it's like, no, figure out who keeps messing up, put the money to where people can figure out more safer ways instead of just cutting it off because you're going to put it on the working class people, people who got to drive back and forth to work, who wants to go to their kids' baseball game or football game or volleyball game. You got these parents who are working. You got these people who are working. That's why I keep saying the working class always pays for it. So even though I said that, these fools went out and said, we're going to tax 200 billionaires in California. That's what we're going to do. New York got the nerve to tax somebody when they allowed during Mayor Adams' tenure, they allowed all of those quote unquote asylum seekers, which we know they're not, to come in from all over the world. I mean, even journalists, if you were actually paying attention, you would have seen that border is broken. And Democrats, what they did, they tried to demonize the Republicans who were in those states where, yo, why should homeowners allow people just to come over this border into their fucking yards? Like, you got to be shitting me to even think that's okay. You to think that's okay. And y'all are trying to be on the Democrat side, like thinking it's okay for stuff to happen like that. And that governor, Abbott, had to do what he had to do. But they wanted to demonize him as if what he was doing was so morally wrong because I seen on camera for the journalists who aren't on these big media channels showing areas of the border that were not the port of entry that these people was coming into. People from all over the world just walking on in. And then again, places like New York, California got nerve to try to sue, nerve to try to have an issue because Texas said, yo, we didn't ask for any of them because we got our state rights now. We didn't ask for none of these people to come here. We don't have the money because they understood the budget. We don't have the funds, the money. Biden wasn't giving money out to any of these states to bring in all these people with his old ass. He wasn't doing any of that. And that's how New York got screwed. You see what happened during COVID. They couldn't find no buildings, no nothing to put these homeless in. But now they was able to find all that extra space. They had hotels, they had the money for them and all that stuff, but you didn't have for the Americans. That's why we say it's a hypocrisy thing. That's why you have to look at this as if you would have invested in the people here. If you wouldn't have let them just hang out on the streets and do drugs, and you would have said, yo, we need to get you help, and you can't just tell me no. We're going to put you in these facilities. And you have people overseeing those facilities. You have people checking on that shit because we know in the past, that's how these facilities got out of hand because people want to be in there abusing people. So now you got to have the checks and balances. Again, in my field, we talk about least privileged access. Not giving one person full access of something and not the other checking it off. We have things like that in place. So this is what I'm saying. It never made sense to bring in more people to this country because you weren't investing in the people here. You're removing stuff out of schools. California has had some of the best school systems here. I'm not gonna lie. But when I was in school, high school, they started to remove a lot of or I would say classes that would have gave young people the skills so that they can decide make better decision on, hey, do I want to go to college, because they would have understood. And again, I'm glad that some schools are looking at financial classes. That's a great move. That's a really, really great move, because now you can look at college and say, you know what, tuition has been going up, and they're going to tell me just for this degree I gotta take 5 or 6 years into school like I'm some damn doctor, and I'm not trying to be a doctor. I may want to be a civil engineer or a different type of engineer. You know what I'm saying? But now I got to go 5, 6 years. That's what was happening. But you got people just yapping online, not understanding how those things work because they don't even go to school like that. They don't even read Cat in the Hat books, but got the nerve to talk. And you guys just paying them just like you paying these Democrats that are taxing the hell out of you. So this is all I'm saying. They're pointing out the migration that's coming to Florida, to Texas, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Alabama. So, some of these states do need people there. They do need people that are coming from California because I think we have a lot of intelligent people here, a lot of cool people here. It sucks to see them leave because I just want us to fight together. I just want us to be together on this and work it out, because I love my state. But some of these places like Alabama, they do need. I ain't gonna lie, y'all need help. We can't just be looking at y'all when it's time for football. We gotta look at all of y'all. Oklahoma, same thing. Y'all gotta get it up. Y'all gotta get up to par. You know, Bible Belt areas. Y'all so goddamn obsessed with the Bible that you're not obsessed with your children competing with Chinese coming in, with the Hindus coming in. You're not obsessed with that. We could have been learning refinery and all that stuff, but you're pushing black people away. You're pushing people that could have been used to continue to grow this country, but you don't want to do that. So that's why we're here as well, people. And they're going to conservative states because maybe they're realizing, like, man, conservatives, they actually do have something going on there. I'm not saying they're the smartest. I'm not saying they make the best decisions, but it does seem like they're making sense. Like, you can't just, when I think of conserve, they are looking to conserve how the money is spent as well. So when you're seeing this whole government shutdown battle and stuff, sometimes the conservatives are more like, yo, we do not have the money to just be doing XYZ. We don't. But Democrats have just been throwing money everywhere, man. Yeah, both sides in Congress and the Senate, they have to vote on this to happen. So you may have some Democrats vote with Republicans and vice versa. And that's cool. I'm cool with that. But again, sometimes it's about holding your ground and saying, no, we cannot afford this. Even the 1 trillion that Trump is asking for, like, nigga, you crazy. No, you don't need 1 trillion. Get them wars over with. Stop talking about it. Figure out how you can end it. Get back over here and let's continue to focus on what we got at home. Let's focus on home. That's what we should be focused on home. I'm gonna just read this last part here. It says blue states have a significantly higher tax burden than red states, including income taxes, property taxes, sales and excise taxes, etc. The 10 states with the highest overall tax burden are all blue, while the 10 lowest are all red. Like, you can't be biased and not realize how that's affecting your pockets, especially if you're working. You can't be thinking about a Donald Trump. You gotta be like, no, this has been happening for a long time here. This ain't new. This ain't because Donald Trump is in the office. Fuck all that. A lower tax burden means a lower cost of living, because that's what the issue is, the cost of living. That's why uh, that guy set that warehouse on fire. Is because of this. That warehouse has nothing to do with it. It's the fact that the warehouse can't pay him more what he's probably valued at, probably a $1 or $2 raise maybe because of the line of work. But they can put more in his pocket if the state wasn't taxing like crazy, taxing that business. He probably don't even understand that. And it makes it easier to save, invest, and own a home by allowing individuals and businesses to keep more of what they earn. People's take home pay is higher and their paychecks go further. This is literally the issue. If people are scared to spend money in the economy, that's why I'm like, the millennial class, the millennial generation, I don't care what Trump is saying, they got to see it as, I think we should get a bailout because a lot of us went to school, right? Just because jobs aren't ready or whatever, I think we should get the bailout because we want to contribute to the economy. We can't care about people talking about pay your bill. Like, no, this is not about that right now. That's not what it's about. Understand what's going on and why it needs to happen. They didn't even have to bring in more immigrants if you would have did the things you're supposed to do. With lower sales, excise, and property taxes, the total cost to the consumer for products and services is cheaper. So we know that's why the cost of living in California is crazy. It's because of these damn taxes. And while red states like Florida are planning tax cuts, blue states like Virginia are planning tax hikes. And that's on top of already having higher than average tax burdens. And some of these tax hikes are coming because they need to figure out a way to afford for paying for the influx of people they brought here. Because the federal government is saying, hell no, you made the wrong decision to allow more than what the lottery that we have, because they have a lottery, you did that. That's your fault. And what do residents get for the nosebleed level of taxation in places like California, New York, and Illinois? They don't get roads smooth as glass or better schools. Literacy and numeracy rates are terrible, nor do they get safer streets. Places like New York City and Chicago are among the deadliest in America. California cities have more homelessness people, or more homeless people than any state in the country. This is just the truth. And you having a biased mindset is why this is happening. It's why it's happening. You just don't want to realize it. You think this is about Trump, and it's not. It's been affecting people for a long time now. So they want billionaires to pay for their social programs. And I believe, no, have those immigrants you've been bringing in pay for those social programs. And don't provide the social programs to them because you feel like they deserve to benefit. No, let that be a reason. If you're going to come here, you're going to pay for these social programs. Because why should you put it on the billionaires? The 200 that they said that they came across. They want 200 people to put into programs for over millions of people when they should have focused on the working class. And I've been saying that in different comment sections, the working class, because I realized a long time ago, the working class is taking hit after hit after hit after hit, especially when it comes to taxes. It's the working class, right? But when you're talking about virtue signaling, I believe that's what Democrats continue to promote. And again, they continue to promote what these taxes on everyone, tax after tax. It's like, do they have any ideas outside of putting another tax on someone? And you Democratic voters out here, you're blaming Trump for something that has been going on before Trump. Cost of living was rising way before Trump, before he even was running. It was rising during Obama's era. And here's why, when you're talking about tuition, even tuition was already rising, y'all. Some people that were going to school already had to stay in school for 5 years because the affordability, classes was changing. This was before remote, work and all that. This was before that was even a thing. But this is what was happening. So these costs were already rising, y'all. That's what I'm saying. You can't look at this from a biased point of view. You can't think just the Democrats have your best interest because they don't. All black people who actually are not trying to play like they care because they just need the income from streaming and stuff. But black people who really understand that, who really understand the differences in their communities, who understand what was happening at the same time, we've been here. We've been talking about this stuff. But you can't talk about this with people who just have an ignorance. They think you're hating on them. And you're trying to show them this is what's really going on, man. And if we don't fix it, if we don't look at this as an issue, we're going to see later issues come on down the line. This is why I was like, I think after 2012 was the first and last time I went out protesting, and that was for Martin, you know. And I remember being out there again. I'm just out there to protest because I understood the issue that was happening. It wasn't even about policing, it was never about policing. It was the fact that a man was able to pretend like he's some vigilante and going out there, get into a scrapple when he was told not to do it, went out there and ended up, murdering that young man, regardless of what he felt, regardless of how he felt about it. So it wasn't even a policing issue, but somehow it turned into a policing issue. Some of these people, you know, um, they did have weapons on them. But because the media manipulated, and you have some ignorant people in our community who rather react first. And I'm saying that because, again, I've been around people who just immediately was aggressive, like some aggressive ass dog, like just being aggressive towards me. I'm not afraid to fight you. I'm not afraid of that, but I don't feel like I need to do any of that. I don't feel I need to be put on your level. I don't want to be like you. So I don't hang around those people. I don't care about what they think. I don't care about their opinions, you know? But all of this stuff is happening and going on in California. And again, I'm just speaking towards California, even though we know other states are trying to do the same thing. But this is what you got to look at is this is what the Democrats are doing. This is what they propose as a plan. They're trying to give your money away to what they want to perceive as immigrants fearing for their lives and all that. Where's the reparations and money for the black people who said they fear for their lives? They're at least they're Americanized, but no cash bill was something they gave because a certain sector of black people said the issues we're dealing with is crime. And another sector is like the issues we're dealing with is child support. That's because you're poor. You have a poor mindset. When the issues are still education, fighting for your schools and your districts and your area, better funding so that your kids have a fighting chance to go out here, whether you want them to go into college or the trades or whatever it is, you want them to have a fighting chance. You want them to compete with everybody else. You want them to compete with the Chinese dude coming in or the Chinese woman, the Indians and Hindu people. You want them to compete, and that's the level that I am on. I don't see them as something better than me. I put in that work just as well as them. I remember when like the Hindus specifically. I remember when they was coming up because I was, when I was on YouTube, I was looking at a lot of educational stuff. So I was learning a lot, and vice versa. They learning from me too. I don't hate them. I just know I compete against them. But when the system is saying we're gonna keep certain people out because we just don't want them to come up, or they said something that struck an emotional nerve, because words hurt me all the time. These are the results. And again, Democrats can't figure out what to do. So here we are with another tax, and that's what you guys need to see. You, especially you Democratic voters. What the hell? Another tax? It's not even about these people having so much money, right? The issue here, the underlying issue is that the Democrats do not have any plans. They have not implemented anything that we can see that we can see out, because we're always revoting on more propositions that are for more taxes and more taxes. And now they want to say, well, we're going to go after the wealthy um, for taxes. As you see here, it says an exit or wealth tax. So again, you don't have to be a billionaire. And they may say, we're going to tax you. You can be a single parent here in California, for example. I'm just giving you the idea of how this is going to happen or could possibly happen depending on how they write this policy out, this tax policy. They can say you can be a single parent and you're like, yo, I'm about to move to Las Vegas because it's unaffordable or there's no jobs here. I want better opportunity, because sometimes that's what it is, just better opportunity to move up. I want my brain challenged a little bit better, right? And I'm going to leave for Vegas. What they're saying is, well, you exit, we're going to look at all the assets, all this stuff you have, and we're going to tax all of that before you leave, because we need you to pay still for this state. They still want you to pay for a state that you done left. It's such a ridiculous thought process that these people have. Like, what be going on in here that they think this is morally right, that they think this makes any sense? They've been in office for decades. They've been in office. We put them in, especially after Bush era. We put the Democrats in office for decades. They had the entire time. They see, they know, they talk to the financial market advisors. These people can see because of the mindset. And, when you're studying a lot like that, when you understand how things are, and sometimes it's a spiritual thing that's happening when you can foresee things that's going to happen, they probably been talking to these people, telling them about what's happening, and they still just, no, I'm gonna excuse it. I'm not gonna even focus on it. But now to feel morally correct during Trump's term, all of a sudden, oh, we're gonna put this exit tax from our states if you leave. But home prices are rising. You got young millennials who still can't afford homes. It's not about getting the home. It's can you afford it because the cost is the issue. The cost of living is the issue. If everybody is moving to these other states, their costs are going to rise at some point. The balance would be every state figuring out what's going on with these taxes, what can we do so that people can stay, how can we bring job production here, how can we not tax the hell out of people, how can we not put programs and social programs on people that makes no sense. I remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger was in office, he was telling us in California, yo, we got all these programs that are not needed or people ain't even utilizing, and they got money in here. We need to kill all. He was one of the first in California already talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. He was already someone that was talking about that stuff during his tenure as the governor of California. So now we have these people saying we want to bring an exit tax. Ridiculous, if you ask me. Just ridiculous. Let's just read here. It says, Swirsky said among the most prominent is California's proposed billionaire tax act, which would impose a one-time 5% tax on the total net worth of anyone worth over 1 billion living in the state, which would impact at least 200 people. Like, are you shitting me? That's it? That's your moral standing that y'all want to stand on? And you're telling them because they're leaving, if they decide to leave, you're still going to tax them because they need to pay for the programs here because y'all can't figure anything out? It says another state, Washington, who just passed a 9.9% tax on incomes over $1 million. The bill's passage came around the same time Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, who has an estimated net worth of over 3 billion, announced his move to Florida. So now that people, billionaires, and again, they want to promote this as billionaires and millionaires only, right? But they're not discussing people who are being forced to move out. They're not talking about the average working class person or the person who's dealing with unemployment or the person who's dealing being a single parent and they have to move because they want their child in better schools and in better communities. So it's better to move because ain't nothing shaking where they're at. They're not talking about those people also having to move and they don't have a goddamn clue on what to do. So because of the media is promoting this whole billionaire back and forth, they want to make it seem like, oh well, we just need to tax the wealthy, not focusing on the middle class. Again, I call it the working class. I don't even call it the middle class anymore. If you're working, you're part of the working class. Some of the working class are homeless. Yes, there's homeless people who are working and they're getting taxed. They're paying taxes at the same time. And this is what I'm saying. What the hell are Democrats even thinking? If you are a Democratic voter, this These are the things you have to really consider when you're voting. It's not about we're getting free stuff, it's the economics behind it. It's why it's important for you to take education seriously, because these type of people bank on you being dumb. They bank on you not giving a damn. They bank on you by manipulating you with the media and saying, oh, well, ICE is putting fear in our community. When ICE is coming there to do the damn job they've been doing for years now. Because that person know they violated. They know they did something wrong. They know that. They're not, I don't call you, if you're, I don't think you're all ignorant like that. We know that you've been gaming the system and you were allowed since Obama's era, because he didn't even go after he went after criminals too, and that's what y'all not realizing. Some things that Trump and his administration is saying is the same thing Democrats are saying, and I think it's a great chessboard move to say it, and people are finding out. Well, damn, Democrats said the same thing. They did the same thing. So what's going on here? Is there a bias happening here now? Come on now, y'all. I'm not in agreement with everything Trump does, everything his administration does. Wasn't in agreement with a lot of Republicans. I'm just not. I don't think like that. I understand you got to give and take. I understand you got to play this political chessboard, and when and even specifically for Black people, we have to become politically illiterate. That's why we continue to lose. We got to stop thinking crime is our only issue. If your son or your daughter is messing up, they need to go pay for those consequences. That's just what it is. They need to go until they get it. If they don't get it, who gives a damn? We don't want your son and your daughter around our community terrorizing it. They need to go. And if you feel like that about other communities, this is why active and being literate, so we can say, yo, why aren't you guys auditing these businesses that you're allowing to come into our communities, and we don't see much of our people hired here? Now you attack the system. Now you can say we got lawyers, plural, that went to school, got themselves educated, disciplined, because it's not something they just learn online. They're not just spreading it around like it's a chicken circuit. They're not doing that. They're actually reading the books, reading the law, and now can be able to go and challenge it. That's what you want. You got a lot of talking heads and conversations online, but you gotta make sure you're supporting those Black people that are doing those things. It's like y'all need to stop supporting rap. You need to stop supporting certain entertainment. You got to stop supporting it more than you support the people that are going to school. They're just as disciplined. This is why they don't want to live around y'all. We don't want to live around y'all because it's nothing but hate, envy, jealousy. You just start thinking of schemes and scams instead of saying, you know what, let's figure out how we can get on the same level. We can have some group reading. We can have sessions, because there's Black business. Hopefully some of they're still going. I know there was one I used to attend. But business places you can go into to learn how to fill out business applications, and learning different aspects of your business, like managing it. And there's a lot. There's definitely Black places to go to, so you don't have to say I have to go to somebody's white stuff. But how do you know about it if you don't support it? And that was a place. It was, to me, I feel like nobody. I mean, people knew, but it wasn't filled up like that. You know what I'm saying? So now, that's what I'm saying. Like, this move can be like, they're not only gonna, if they're talking about an exit tax, that means, are you paying attention to the people who are being forced out because they can't afford it no more? And you think 200 billionaires in California is going to help all the programs here, or Hochul talking about we want them to still support the social programs here. Y'all gotta fix what the fuck is going on already. You gotta show them, these people who got to those millions and billions. You gotta show them, why do I need to stay here if you're gonna keep taxing the hell out of everybody, if you're going to keep allowing crime, which is rising cost, and cost of living is going up and up and up, if you're going to keep bringing in people from all over the world, and you want me to pay for this, working class, even let's forget the millions of billionaires, working class, you getting taxed on your checks, then you get more taxes that you're paying for, and that's how your cost of living is also rising, because they have to pay for certain stuff with your tax. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is just, to me, it's so stupid. And you're not seeing the Democrats for what they are. They don't have anybody that has an IQ enough to say, why do we keep throwing taxes out there as a solution? Like, every time they go with solution is a tax. We gotta get some money for this, guys. If I was running for any of these positions, I'm telling you, I would be like, I would handle it like we do in, you know, cyber world or information technology world. We have to do an agile or scrum, and we're going to look at every damn project, see where we're at every week. We're going to meet every damn week, every damn day, and I want to see growth. I want to have this shit done. I need to see the results, and I think that's what we need to ask for as voters. We want to see the results. Now they post stuff on their government sites and stuff like that, but I'm talking about like progress. An actual project mapping for each project that's get funded. We want to see that. I think if we would have saw that with the whole train project, where we're like, okay, the federal government just gave them, let's just say, $50 million to have that train actually go from LA to Frisco, not between Modesto and fucking Bakersfield. But we're gonna go ahead, because we still got the Amtrak here, y'all. We still got Amtrak that literally goes. I would say it stops at Bakersfield, and then you get on a bus, and that can take you into LA or whatever. But we still got different train systems as well, when you're going into LA, because we got the mountains. So that's the issue. How do we put this train into these mountains other than just the Central Valley, right? But you have the Amtrak that literally travels back and forth throughout California, and then you have the bigger Amtraks that will travel outside the state. Okay, so we still have that, but this particular train would have served us outside of Amtrak, where again it will go into LA, and it will go into San Francisco, which could have spread out people to find different jobs, different resources. A lot of things could have came out of this, but I think what we should have seen is a project map. And hell, everybody probably would have learned agile at that time, and you could apply for a project management job and say, hey, I learned agile. That would have been your training. Okay, but that would be something I would want to see. And a lot of us in certain fields, some a white collar field, that's how we track. Even in construction, that's how you track. You have your project managers and your coordinators. You track all that stuff. So now you could say, well, this is public information. We just got $50 billion from the federal government. We're going to see how that money is going to be spent, because every week we're going to be updated on what's happening. Even if something got pushed back because a permit maybe, or maybe they're still trying to find the right workers or whatever. Even if that stuff is happening, we can still see why it happened. Talk about why it didn't happen or why it did happen. We can cross out something on the Gantt chart, but a way to see it. And I think that's what's coming out. I have this site called the Pact, and I built it probably about a year ago, and I haven't been promoting it because I'm not there yet. But it's just to follow politicians, what they voted for, so that people can grade them. You may see some people that probably came across it, and you might probably see them talking about it now. But I'm telling you, some of the things I see, I'm like, man, I've already put those things out. Or again, if you admire me, that's fine. I'm not asking everybody to give me credit because sometimes it's just about putting it out, getting it manifested, right? But I'm just saying the thought process was having a grading system, talking about the specific things that we want the government, local or state or federal, to address that affect us in our communities. And I think at first I was wanting it to be based for Black people, specifically. But I think as Black people we can't put ourselves on an island. It's good to be on an island because of the subset of Americans that we are, just like how white Americans, Italians, Germans, just how they have their own different culture. We also have that. I don't want to ever take away from that, but we are American, meaning the bigger goal, the bigger idea is that we have to make sure that when we are voting, it does support all Americans specifically. So if we're saying we don't want illegal immigrants here, we have to be in accordance, the same alignment with white America, with the legal immigrants that are here, with the Mexicans, El Salvadorians, Venezuelans, Italians, Germans, Armenians. We all have to be on the same page together as Americans because we know if we can get them to change the laws, it'll be across the board versus, hey, in our community, in our Black community, we don't want you sending the immigrants here to be an influx to our community, and we don't see as many Black businesses, because you're trying to promote that we don't have enough Black people here that can start a legitimate business and just have the funding to support that from our state and local governments outside of our customers that come. And those are the things that we have to see it as. If we want to keep our community unique to our culture, and look, it's fine if people admire us. I get that, right? I admire other communities too. I love different cultures, and that's just how I was raised. And when I went to different schools, you had an appreciation for other people's culture. So, I'm not gonna ever deny anything like that. I think that's what makes us all different on this planet. But when we're talking about our community, we still want to make sure our state and local governors are protecting us and not trying to push us away, push us out, deny us because, again, we want to focus on crime. Crime is just one aspect, and that's, again, we all have to be on one accord to say, yo, we do not want criminals in our neighborhood. They need to serve their consequences. Give up Jimmy John, give up Little Pistol Starter, give them up so we can heal in our communities, so older women and men and kids can play, grass is growing, it's clean up around there. That's what we really want. We want a Fruitopia in our neighborhood, right? So these are some of the people, because I think what we don't realize is that some Black people have also had to leave California, because a lot of those communities were Black. Some of those major cities were Black, and they've been pushed out. So when you're talking about this exit tax, even though they're making it as, hey, we're going to target the governor, but even middle class, working class, or people who are poor, it's a possibility you would get taxed just for saying, yo, y'all fucking up, y'all not helping me. I'm gonna have to leave to states that want to take care of me better, or at least give me a fighting chance to take care of myself, right? And that's what we want. We just want to take care of ourselves, but we can't have the government thinking they're going to take care of us through taxes all the time, right? So um, we're losing money in California. Again, I know it's showing a lot of residents, but again, I'm just saying California has over 40 to 50 million people here. So that's small fries. But it still is a big impact because you have some of the biggest corporations leaving, and now they see that and they want to go after it. I'm a California native. I love it here. It's a big state. It's so beautiful from the fields to the beaches. to more inland. You know, it's beautiful here, man. It's so many nice people to be around, but you just don't want to see something like this happening because the media is making it a war between politics that's been going on for a long time. So, thank you guys for coming to my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please just stay alert to this information, this news out here that's going on, and just make it make sense for yourself. You know, don't let the media be manipulative. Find out the true reason why it's happening and go from there.